Welcome back to the 12th Man podcast, a very special episode for Liverpool fans looking back at Liverpool's historic Premier League victory, their first Premier League title in front of their fans. Of course, they were denied that opportunity in 2020 due to the COVID outbreak and the national lockdown, everything that denied Liverpool that kind of celebration with the players, the management, and the fans. We're going to be looking also at the bottom three, where it was confirmed on Saturday that they've been all relegated in record time. Of course, Southampton went a couple of weeks ago. Leicester were relegated by Liverpool the week before, and Ipswich were all but down. And that was confirmed on Saturday after a 3-0 defeat to Newcastle. Leeds and Burnley are back in the Premier League. Will they fare any better than the last 6 teams to be promoted, who have all been relegated? And we'll look at the favourites. Who are the favourites for the playoffs? Who will be that final spot in the Premier League? Of course, some big clubs vying for that 20th position in the Premier League for next season. We'll look at the only thing left on the line in the Premier League, and that is the race for the Champions League and the all-European spots. We'll look back at the FA Cup. Of course, Man City will play Crystal Palace in the FA Cup final. A massive opportunity for Crystal Palace to get a trophy. They were denied by Manchester United about 10 years ago, despite taking the lead in that final. Will they have a change of fortune this time, or will Man City rescue what's been a subpar season with silverware? And finally, we'll look ahead to a big week in Europe for the English clubs. Of course, Arsenal in action in the Champions League, Man United and Spurs in action in the Europa League in potential saving season ties. Owen, I know I've went through quite a bit there and I've kept you waiting, but I'm sure you're delighted to be on. And I was speaking to you yesterday, and you were a very happy man. And of course, it's not that we knew this was coming, but of course, Liverpool fans wanted to be confirmed champions before they really celebrated. And we seen that massive outcry of celebration yesterday between Slot, the management team, the coaches, former players, legends, fans. Everyone was kind of getting involved.
It was just a special day from start to finish. Like you even said to me, like Liverpool were going to hammer Spurs, and it turned out like we did when Spurs.
I think our levels is it. They were the perfect opponents for Liverpool's big day.
Because I think some of our players said it too. Like I was listening to some of the interviews saying, "Oh, were you worried when you went 1-0 down?" This, and Andy Robertson said, "No, because Spurs always give you chances." So he was proven right. But no, listen, not they discredit Spurs, but they weren't the story yesterday. The story yesterday was Liverpool getting the job over the line, and thankfully we did. And now I can sit back and watch these last 4 games and not care what happens, but and just roll on that Crystal Palace game. Did they get their hands on it?
Yeah, I suppose it's great to be champions, but is that the negative of winning it so easily? Is that the next 3 games really are meaningless? It's really about getting to the last game, winning the last game in front of the fans, getting the title. I mean, you could argue that Stamford Bridge is a game they'll be up for. Arsenal at home, who are looking like they're going to be their nearest rival in second place. There's a bit of a brewing rivalry there between the fans, and maybe they'll be up for that game. The Brighton game, I'm not sure fans will care what happens there. And of course, the Palace game, they'll only won. But, the next 3 games really are meaningless in terms of points, results, But as a fan, do you expect Liverpool to, try and get wins in those games?
I think we'll go out to 1, but I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if we lose the Chelsea and Arsenal, to be honest. Because
Kieran finally gets one right. He says every year Liverpool's going to be champions. You say it. You say it often enough. You're going to get it right sometime.
Mistake makes told you.
But there you go.
See, no, if you mind, last time we won the league, the next game we went out and got whapped 4-0 by Man City. So I would say the players were out in the booze last night. So I'd say there'll be a few sore heads heading towards that Chelsea game. But hey, it's nice now just to watch the game, and if we lose, there'll be no big outcry. So
yeah, of course, Liverpool were welcoming Spurs at Anfield yesterday. Spurs took about a shock lead. I don't think there was anyone panicking. I don't even think Spurs fans were getting too excited, to be honest, of maybe being, flirting the big day. being the potential stumbling block for Liverpool's party celebrations to be on hold. But I think it was over pretty quickly once Liverpool got those quick fire goals. And I think really from 3-1, Spurs really, if there was any resistance in the first sort of 30 minutes, there was zero resistance in the final 60. Look, give Liverpool credit. They scored some good goals. But I felt it was all very easy for them in the end. And
Yeah.
a lot of stepped it up. They could have scored a lot more goals. And I think if you look at some of the goals that Spurs conceded, there was a real lack of effort. Look, you could look at it that maybe they're worried about getting injuries. They don't want to miss the big semi-final and possible final. But I mean, there's very mixed opinions on this from Spurs and Man United fans at how these Premier League games are playing out for them at the moment. We'll get back to Liverpool on, but I mean, I speak to some Spurs fans yesterday that went to the game and they're disappointed with the lack of application, the lack of effort. Then there's other Spurs fans saying, well, look, what happens if they get injured? Trying to run 30 or 40 yards forward, or, making stretching challenges, they block and they get hamstring injuries. So is it a bit of a catch-22 for Spurs and Man United at the moment where they maybe have to go through some pain to get the gain in the end? Because at the moment, it looks like the players are not interested at all in Premier League football.
No, but I've said this throughout. Even though Spurs and United are having terrible seasons, you still have to give your best in every game. Like it's not even that they're paid a wild lot of money, and the Spurs fans travelled up there yesterday. Obviously, not expecting much, but they still travelled in their numbers. They still sung their songs at times. So I just think from Spurs yesterday it was yes they have a semi final on Thursday night, but for me I just think it was a disgraceful performance. Like even after you scored, did you even have any real shots after that? I don't think so.
Does it come from the manager? Because when you see the team lineup as a Liverpool fan there, or even as a Spurs fan, and you see no Romero, no Van de Ven, no Son, no Bentancur, no Kulusevski, 5 key players left out at the starting 11, and you see the 2 centre backs that were playing against Liverpool in the cup because there was no centre backs available. Danzo and Davis are probably 4th and 5th choice if everyone's fit. Behind Romero, Van de Ven, Dragusin, and even possibly RG Breaker playing there. So, does that set the tone amongst the players that?
It comes from the manager, so it does. Like if he's not really full throttle on it, then the players aren't going to be able. It's not even yesterday. In all the games we've played Spurs this season, apart from the one where you beat us 1-0, we've hammered these every time. Like
yeah,
in the league,
I think if you look at the first game in the league and the home game in the cup, 2 home games, I think Spurs did try. They did give maximum. I think the away game at Anfield there was a lack of effort. They were missing a lot of players. That's to be said. Yeah. There was a real lack of belief, and yesterday there was probably even less belief. And that's a big issue with Spurs at the moment. That I'm not sure. The players aren't full of confidence with the manager. The manager is rotating players because he knows he needs near enough his strongest team. They won this cup.
But what happens then if he's what happens if he's not won?
Well, this is it. I mean, this is it. And we will come back to Liverpool for anyone watching, I promise. But the only thing that will save this season is winning this Europa League. Now, I've heard a lot of Tottenham fans say over the years, I'd take 17th if I meant winning a trophy. Now that they've actually loved it, I think they would probably have a different opinion of it because they've lost nearly every game for the last 3 or 4 months.
I mean, I think they're guaranteed.
What I would say is, if you look back in 2 or 3 years' time or 4 years' time, whenever it is, no one remembers Liverpool finishing below Everton the year they won the Champions League. So all they care about is they won that final. I know the Champions League a bigger trophy, but in terms of it does mask over per seasons, and that will be the only thing that I think when Spurs fans look back in 3 or 4 years' time, if I'm in Bilbao, I'll remember that experience of winning the Europa League over all those games I lost that season. Whilst it's not acceptable, it will be easily forgotten about if they have success in a few weeks' time.
If I'm sitting here now, though, I wouldn't. I do think Spurs will get to the final, but I I think whoever's in the final, I think I think Spurs will struggle. I know United aren't great, and I know Spurs have had their number this season, but I just don't back Spurs in the big games. And
Yeah,
as
that will be the big issue. And let's get back to Liverpool, because let's talk about some of their biggest moments this season. You know, I think from pretty early on they were leading the whole way, really.
in
You
November
know,
we've been top.
yeah, I mean, we started off the season really, really well, but I think a lot of people remained kind of grounded, unless your mates, of course. He was shouting from the rooftops before goal
I
checked
didn't
and whatnot, but
I don't think I didn't until we beat Man City in October, and or was it October or November, and then we drew away with Arsenal. Those were the two games I was thinking, okay, maybe we can do
see,
it.
they beat Chelsea. Remember everyone says the test was coming, and they played Chelsea, Real Madrid, and a few other teams. And Chelsea was the
Liverpool,
2-1 game, and you could argue they weren't great in that game. They were fortunate they won that, and then I think
Wolves
they played
away,
Arsenal the week after, and they
Wolves
were
away
fortunate.
too at the start. We weren't great.
Yeah, and I think the away game at Arsenal, they were
I would know.
battered for most of that game, and they ended up getting a
Yeah.
2-2 draw. And you kind of felt at that point that don't really see these as title owners, but I do agree that when they beat Man City at home, and did they have another big game before that as well? Might
Real
have been
Madrid.
Real
It
Madrid.
was.
Real Madrid. There was kind of that feeling that maybe they could go on to do something pretty special.
We played Leverkusen as well. We beat them 4-0. That's what it was.
Yeah, Graham Rogers is saying, "What a game, what a day." A brilliant day for Liverpool. So would you say that first big moment in the league was beating Man City? Because at that stage, people were still thinking Man City could come back and do it as well.
I think beating Man City home and away this season was big. But for me as well, what was really big was the 2-1 away at Brentford when everyone thought we were going to drop points. And then as much as he's maligned, Nunes pops up and bags 2 big goals. So there's been a few big moments this season, but for me it has to be beating Man City. That was when I really started to believe, right, we can do this.
Yeah, well, I'll go back before it. I mean, as you say, they beat Man City at the start of December. Have it here, the 1st of December, they beat Man City. They had a bit of a stumble then after that. I think they drew at home to Fulham. Despite being down to 10 men, they dropped points.
But then the
And
good thing was every time we drop points, Arsenal drop points as well.
yeah, and then it came to Christmas Day, and they had a one day stay top of the league. And they beat Spurs
We beat
just
Spurs
before
6-3.
Christmas and a 6-3 1. I think from that moment on, they really kicked on the top gear. They beat West Ham 5-0 as well a few days later. And that was big results in London for them. And that took them into the new year in a pretty good, healthy position.
And I think, to be honest, in the second half of the season, we haven't been overly great at times, but we've been dogged at times when we've had we've grounded out ones. Like the West Ham game there a few weeks ago looked like we were going to draw points, and then Van Dijk comes up and one's away a header. Salah against Brighton too. That was a big moment for me when he scored him was it 3-1 we won that day or 2-1?
Yeah, we'll fast forward then to January the 18th, and you mentioned it. I think this was a significant day in the title race. I think at this point it was only ever going to be Liverpool or Arsenal. Yeah. It's getting the added time at Brentford. Brentford are holding Liverpool in an 0-0 draw. If you says Nunes pops up with 2 goals, and then a couple of hours later, Arsenal blow a 2-0 lead at home to Aston Villa and draw 2-2. Yeah. That was a significant day in the title race. You know, there was a 5-point swing, and it could have been a 5-point swing the other way.
And it was the same too. Mine when we drew them 2 games with Villa and Everton back to back.
What's that?
Mine when we drew Everton and Villa back to back, and it was in Arsenal's hands. And then I think Arsenal went and lost to West Ham that week. So I think I just sort of thought every time we slipped up, they slipped up. So that sort of helped me as well. And go right, maybe the football and God are looking down on us. And you know what? People can say what they want about it being a poor standard of Premier League. Do you think in 5 years' time I'll be going, oh, Liverpool won a poor standard of league? No, I'll be sitting going, we won the league and we deserve to win the league.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be the first time for a long time the team in second hasn't got at least 80 points. So there has been a drop off in terms of the teams chasing behind. But Liverpool can only do what Liverpool can do.
And I do expect it to get tougher next season, but I don't think I don't think people will be going on the next season saying, "Oh, we can't win it again."
Yeah. Darren mentioned our big moment there, the 2-0 win away at Bournemouth. Bournemouth are flying at the time, 6-1 on
That's
the
right.
bounce. They just beat Newcastle 4-1 away as well a couple of weeks before that.
I think we got a
They
dodgy
beat
penalty in
Forest
that game,
5
didn't
They
we?
beat Forest 5-0, and Liverpool went there and won 2-0.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, the game could have went either way. It was a tight enough game, but Liverpool got the one, and that was kind of the story of Liverpool's season is when they weren't at their best. 9 times out of 10, they still found a way to win.
The only games that I think we've deserved to lose or not won, probably the two Wolves games and the Chelsea game, and the games that we've lost.
Yeah. But massive moments in the season where it could have went wrong, and Liverpool made sure to get the result, even if the performance wasn't as good. Owen, obviously Arsenal fans are disappointed that they haven't won the league. Of course, they're a long way behind now. How much do you think? And I don't think there's any bias involved here, but do you think the big moments and big games and tight games went Liverpool's way, and Arsenal were probably on the wrong end of certain calls that were on the right end for Liverpool? You know, you think Liverpool have had 3 or 4 more penalties than every other Premier League team this season. Arsenal have had more red cards than everyone else. There's been a few times Arsenal have had red cards where we haven't seen any other team get red cards for, and they drop points in every one of those games. Do you think it's just been one of those seasons that things went Liverpool's way despite them being the most consistent team?
It could be, but then it could happen to us next season where everything goes, football goes, as Gary Neville said, just if football goes in waves. Who's to say next season we won't get decisions going the wrong way? We won't get a whole load of injuries. So
people will remember the bad ones. What?
I know what it's. But I think I've said this before. I think Arsenal make a rod they beat going back way their time wasting, where they're moaning all the time. Arteta's always moaning. So I think sometimes the refs just get sick. You see that way Klopp at times as well, and you see it way even Areola, Bournemouth, he gets booked away a lot for giving off the refs. So I just think sometimes it goes for you and sometimes it goes against you. And look, if Arsenal won the Champions League, it'll be a big moment for them. So they still have that to focus on. But if they don't win the Champions League, then they only have themselves to blame.
Yeah. A lot of people are having their opinion on who were the most significant people in Liverpool's success. People saying Jurgen Klopp deserves a lot of credit. Slot came in and picked up the pieces, but everything was there for him. People are saying Richard Hughes deserves credit for getting contracts over the line. People are saying the recruitment last summer, they bring in the likes of McAllister, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, the midfield three that's been excellent for Liverpool.
Don't forget Andy.
People are saying Mo Salah deserves all the credit for his record-breaking season. Van Dijk for being a great leader. So many people involved, Owen, but I mean, who do you think were the most significant in Liverpool's title-winning campaign?
Well, you'll not hear me say this often, but you have to give credit to the owners for picking Arne Slot. And at the time, it was a gamble. Like I didn't know much of him at the time. The only time I really knew of him was when he was linked with the Spurs job. Funnily enough, but the owners have to take credit. Slot has to take credit. Klopp does have to take credit for leaving us in such a good position. But if you're talking of on the pitch stuff, then the main men for me this season have been Salah, Van Dijk, Gravenberch, I would say, and McAllister too. They're and you know what? I'm going to say Diaz as well. He stepped up in the last.
I was actually speaking to. It was actually a Celtic fan today in work, and he was having this opinion that if Klopp was still a manager this season, Liverpool wouldn't have won the league. And I says, I mean, you're looking on the crystal ball there. No one knows what would happen. And I said, the only thing I would say is that if Klopp was the manager and this team in second can only reach 79 points maximum, they might even get less. There's a good chance they would have won it, needing just 80 points. Although what I would say is, I think Liverpool would have had a lot more injuries. So it's an interesting sort of, when he says, all these hamstring injuries and the way Klopp's teams play, there's a good chance Liverpool would have had a lot of players out. So it's an interesting sort of tick. But I think we had this discussion last year, Owen, and we did I asked you the question, and a lot of these things are just me asking questions, not exactly what I think. But I says, do you wonder if Klopp feels that he can't win the league with Liverpool playing that style of play anymore due to the amount of injuries, the amount of games?
Maybe it
Would
was
he
proven right.
cater his style? Because you look at all these teams that play the high pressing, the electric
Spurs.
football, Bournemouth, Spurs, Brighton, dropping like players dropping like flies everywhere.
Yeah.
Villa have had a lot of injuries. Newcastle have had a fair few. They all kind of play that high aggressive style of football.
United too at times.
A lot of sprinting. So, but then you look at Arsenal, they aren't exactly hell for leather, and they've had a few knocks. So it's sometimes it's just not all. It's just not.
That's what they
guaranteed.
say. It's not they say we haven't had injuries this season. Like Trent's been out for a good portion. But I agree. I agree. Darn, like I said to Gareth yesterday, and I don't know if this was just being caught up in the moment. But for me, other than Rodri and Rice, I'd say he's the best midfielder in the league.
I think if you were putting it on this season, definitely. But I still think the test of a true player is over a number of years. We've seen a lot of players have great seasons and fall off the cliff. So,
but then
an excellent this season.
He was great last year as well when he first came on. Not as good, but it was
not
still
as good. I still think he's a bit rash, and I think that's something that he has to be careful with. I think a few times this year he's got away with a few things.
That might be just an Argentinian thing because you look at Romero.
They're them type of players, aren't they? You've seen Richarlison players having right with Elliot. I think that's just their aggressive South Americans.
Did you see the thing Elliot did to Richarlison, the 30 years thing for Everton? I was laughing.
Charlie not make him or something than Richarlison. I honestly think Richarlison's so misinterpreted. Honestly, see everyone like that I know that are close to Spurs. One of the nicest fellas apparently you can meet. He says
it's just easy. It's just easy to wind up.
Madison. He says it's chalk and cheese. He says Richarlison doesn't have time for anything. He does a lot of charity work. He sends a lot of money back to Brazil.
I don't think he'll be. Don't think he'll be at Spurs in this one. I think he'll be shipped to Saudi or something.
I think the Richarlison's biggest issue is just emotional. I think that's why he loses his head. He's a few times you see him, he's ready to cry. I think he's just so worked up.
He's like Nunez gets emotional at times.
Yeah, but
for me, the story of the season too is we didn't bring in anyone, and the emergence of Ryan Gravenberch at that in that 6 role. Because I remember sitting at the first day of the season against Ipswich, and everyone was going, "Oh, I don't know about this," but he hasn't had a goal or assist this season, but he's just elegant on the ball. And what I love
it'll be interesting to see what happens in the summer because how do you drop those 3 midfielders next season?
You don't, but we need better backup because
will Gravenberch reach that level again? That's a true test of his chart. Can he be sustainable on that role?
The thing I would say is we need a better. This is mad. We won the league, but Slot obviously, like Case has been a non-entity. Like he hasn't got any minutes. He doesn't seem to trust Elliot that much.
Yeah.
And who else is like Nunez and Jota? I would say are away. So there is going to be a lot of change in the summer. But for me, as I've said on here before, we'll probably speak about it. But in the summer, I can see a left back coming in, a striker coming in, a centre back coming in, a midfielder coming in, and a right back. And now we see this every summer with Liverpool. But according to the Liverpool journalist, Arne Slot will be given a significant budget to spend. Whether that
and the fact that Premier League champions do, not that they need any more attraction, but that even adds the attraction of playing for the champions. Of course, we'll be back in the Champions League next season. Owen, Arne Slot has got Liverpool back on top of the table. But as he said, a high bar now. Is that going to be his detriment? Is he going to be expected to do that every year, or up there challenging every year, or winning trophies every year?
Well, it's not really setting a high bar because at Liverpool, you are expected to not one every year, but you're expected. He said himself yesterday, like, we'll be competing again next year. Well, we won or not, it's a different thing. But if we're sitting this time next year, still fighting for titles, I'll be more than happy. I don't expect Liverpool to win every year, but I expect us to be challenging every year.
Just on Nunez, I mean, yesterday, if he wasn't finished already, and I think he is finished already, to be 5-1 up with a couple of months to go, and you're trying to square up past the Salah. I mean, the game's over. That just shows you where he's at. And he couldn't even do that properly. So, I mean, he needs a move as much as Liverpool need rid of him. I think he needs a move to revitalize.
Do you think he goes to Saudi? Do you think he goes to Spain?
I think he was back to Europe somewhere. He's definitely a better player than what he's shown. There's definitely ability there, but it's just not going to happen from Liverpool. Definitely not. Like,
Klopp couldn't get a tune out of him. Slot didn't. It's just a confidence thing, and it's funny because it's been well documented on here that I've only really started to turn on him this season. Not turn on him, so to speak, but like I've only this season that my patience is wore thin because it's his third year now, and I don't have his stats to hand,
I
but
think his opportunities have been getting less and less as the season's going on, though. So I think that's a sign that I think Nunez will know as well deep down he probably needs a move. It's just not going to happen from Liverpool. And it's a shame because I think he's a likable player, but
it'll be interesting to see who we bring in to replace him and what type of striker. The one
I think
I'm
South
seeing,
Americans, they are very hit and miss in the Premier League. You get great ones and you get our ones that don't really turn up and they go out. Like Forlan's a prime example. It's been excellent everywhere else. Didn't really do it at Man United.
Well, Diaz, I know he's had miss, but Diaz has been alright since we signed him.
I think he's Liverpool got what they paid for him. Like I don't think he's been outstanding. I think Yapko's on a different level than Diaz personally. I think he'll be a bigger player.
Who's the South Americans in the league at the minute? Like Romero and McAllister.
I think Romero will be gone this summer. But look, I just think over the years we've seen so many great South Americans with great reputations come here, and some have done well, some others haven't.
You look at Nunez before he came here. I was looking at compilations, going, "This boy's going to be a machine for us," and it hasn't worked out. But it'll be interesting to see who Liverpool go for and what type of striker they go for. For me, I would be going on for Liam Delap. I really would. 30 million release clause, pre-improving. I'd be snapping.
I think the problem being is Delap going to be the starter for Liverpool because you look at it, Jota's on his way out. Nunez has not yet. So I mean, Delap, whilst as talented, will he suit playing in a Liverpool team that's going to have a lot of the ball? He's a bit of a bully and he can score and stuff.
We're not getting Isaac. He's not going anywhere this summer.
This is the thing, right? This is the next question I had. Do we expect Liverpool to reach an even better level next season? I think signing Liam Delap, if he's a squad player, is a good signing. He could be a special player in the future.
Yeah.
I think for Liverpool to go again, won the league next year, you have to envisage, although he's been excellent, Salah, it's unlikely he's going to get the same numbers again because it's record-breaking numbers.
Yeah.
Over the last few weeks, he has went off the boil slightly, so he is human. He's going to have dips, and you can imagine that he'll likely have more dips as he gets older, while still being at a high level. I think Liverpool needs someone that's ready now. It's guaranteed to score 25 to 30 goals, and I think if that means going. If you go to Newcastle and they say, we'll give you 130, 140, 150, and they say, look, we're still not selling them, then you've done what you can. But I think Liverpool need to explore that opportunity.
The one for me, I know he's but I will go for Victor Osimhen too.
Mountain Turkey at the moment. Bad character, apparently. That's the only thing. Liverpool don't usually go for players with bad character.
I mean, we went with Balotelli before.
It's changed a lot since Sambo.
But I just can't see we might try for Isaac, but I can't see a world where we get
rumors that Harry Kane might be open to move back to England, but I think the issue for Liverpool will be the age.
And his wage probably because we already have Salah 400k, Van Dijk 400k, and Kane wouldn't be looking for a low wage so. It's going to be interesting, but Isaac would be my dream target. Like if there's anyone I would take at Liverpool, it would be him. But I just can't see how Liverpool's not the club they go out and spend 140, 50 million on someone.
Yeah.
As much as I would love it, we should have went and got Isaac when he was at Dortmund, wasn't it? And then Real Sociedad.
Real Sociedad.
Like we should have went and got him then, because it always comes out. Oh, Liverpool appreciated this player when he was here, and you're like. Just go get him.
I think it's been a mixed season for Solanke, but I still think Arsenal Liverpool must have trick in the summer with him. I still think he could have done a job for either team.
Well, we had a buyback clause, I think.
But it must have been expired.
I know we had a sell-on clause because when you bought him, we got like 9 million.
I think the Spurs paid 57 million for him. And to be honest, you're going to pay that for somebody maybe at. I don't think Solanke's a world class. We're going to ever get the world class, but I think he's a decent, proven Premier League striker. He can score his right foot, left foot, header. He's had a few injuries, and of course, that's probably reason why he hasn't got more goals. But especially in that first half, yesterday, I thought he'd done a really good job against Van Dijk and Kanate. And remember that home game in the cup? He was excellent in the home game in the cup before he got his injury. I think he's only getting back to speed now over the last couple of weeks. He still have that bad ankle injury. But
I like him as a player, but if you're asking me, if if you're saying who's going to be Liverpool's number 9 in starting next season, I'm going to go for Hugo Ekitike because
Yeah, I
he's the
don't
name.
like with him. Have
He's
to
the
say, look,
name.
I've seen him twice against Spurs. Scored a great goal and done nothing else. But look, that's just for Frankfurt. Who knows what he would be like for Liverpool? Owen, let's look at the opposite end of the table. And the first time ever with 4 games to go, all 3 teams are relegated. Whilst it's been disappointing seasons for Spurs, Man United, West Ham, still quite a big gap between them and 17th.
Yeah.
And for how poor those teams have been, they're not even be in any danger of relegation. It's pretty scary one. So, I mean, this is the second season in a row where we've had 3 teams pretty much relegated. Now, last season, I think Luton were relegated in the second last game. But again, I think the 2 teams were down, Burnley and who was the other team went down last year? Who went down with Luton and Burnley last year?
Who got promoted the year before? I can't remember. Burnley Luton. What was it? I think it was Burnley. It was Burnley.
Burnley, Burnley, Luton, and who was the other one? Got me off guard.
Hold on, I have to look at the championship. This is going to annoy me until I don't get it. I have to look at the championship table.
Oh, Southampton.
Aye.
Wasn't it?
What?
No, I come the year before. That was so. Who was the other team? Luton, Burnley, and who else went down? Leeds. There we go.
Leeds. There was.
And they were all relegated pretty early.
Because Leeds are coming back up next year. That's what got me confused. I thought Leeds were coming down.
So those 3 teams went down, and this year was even worse. Where these 4 teams were relegated. Southampton were almost they were minutes away from making sure they get more points than Derby, but they'll have to sweat it on yet. But there was never really any point of the season where we thought any of these teams could stay up.
I think when Gary O'Neill was in charge at Wolves, I definitely thought Wolves were going to go down.
Yeah,
because that looked like they lost the dressing room. But I think
Brer's done a good job.
I think Southampton they were down in bloody October. They just looked pointless. Leicester. The problem, I think, second Steve Cooper was a problem. I think if they had kept him, they could have. I know at the time I said it was a good decision, but in hindsight, I think if they had kept him, yes, the fans weren't really. But I don't. When they sacked him, I don't even think they were in the bottom 3.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues that Leicester had, and I think Conor Cody flagged this up, is they had a manager playing one way last year, and then they got a completely different style of manager this year. So it was, and a lot of players had left and come on. So it was always going to be difficult for Leicester. There's a lot of mismanagement from the board. Since the owner died, the son's come on. There's not the same kind of level of passion. There's been a lot of poor decision making. And I worry for Leicester, to be honest, because they do not have the squad they went down the last time way, and they were able to sell players, they generate funds. I don't really see that this time around. Southampton are a bit of a yo-yo team, and they do often produce young talent, so Southampton might be okay. They might be up there against fighting. Who?
I think Ipswich will come back up if they can keep a lot of their players.
Be interesting to see if clubs look at Kieran McKenna. But, I mean, why do you think it is getting so hard? I mean, back-to-back relegations for the promoted teams?
It's just the lower level of the Premier League is just getting better. Like, you look at it, Bournemouth at times this season, we're qualifying. We're going to qualify for Europe. Fulham I think that mid-table to the Premier League down to from I would say Everton. It's just they can't compete financially either. I know they get a bit of a budget for getting promoted, but I just think it's harder to compete with the Premier League and it's sad. Yes, it is. It is boring that the same teams are going down, but I don't know how you change that because
in any other season too. I mean, West Ham, Spurs, and United be further up, and there would have been 20. These teams that were relegated 4 weeks ago, only for Spurs, United, and West Ham been so poor.
So if them teams weren't as bad, the relegation battle could have been over weeks ago, as you say. But I don't know how you change it because the Premier League's the teams in the Premier League now are only going to get look at Forest.
I've seen somebody suggest that they start plus 10 points, but how can you have the integrity of the league's gone that way?
Nah, it's might be gone anyway if City don't get done with their charges. But that's
Now, one thing that has come out of this, Leeds and Burnley, of course, if you don't know, were promoted there on Easter Monday.
I don't want Burnley back in the Prem. They're just so boring.
Leeds are playing tonight. Actually, Burnley are 3 points ahead. Leeds play tonight. If they win, they'll go back on top of the league goal difference. And of course, the final day of the championship is on Saturday. Leeds and Burnley could well be tussling it out for the title. Both have achieved the remaining promotion.
The Leeds sack Fark.
This is what I was going to say. Interesting. There's talks going to happen in the next few weeks once the season's over that Leeds are contemplating replacing their manager that got promoted due to the fact that Fark has got a very poor Premier League record.
Yeah.
But is that a sensible choice? You know, as there are certain managers that are good at getting you out of the championship but necessarily can't hack it in the Premier League. And if Leeds were to lose 8 of their first 12 games and they're sitting on 4 points, they're going to sack him anyway. So if they believe that Farke is just a championship manager and realistically they think he's at his depth at the Premier League, is it a wiser move to do it in the summer now? Get a manager in that can work on a style of play over pre-season? Because let's be honest, Daniel Farke's style is attacking football. And I think that's the issue that Leeds have had over the last few times they've been too attacking and they've been getting ripped apart. You know, do Leeds need a tactical specialist to go in there? It's going to make them hard to beat, resilient. A bit like Forest. Build your Premier League status back up and then move to being a more attacking team.
It's mad to say, but I've seen links with Jose Mourinho, and I'm not even making that up. I've seen links, but I don't know. I don't know if I know Leeds are a big club. I don't know if Leeds are. I know Leeds are a big club, but I don't know if Jose his ego would allow him to drop that.
If Jose chased out of Galatasaray, I'm not really sure where he can go because he's been at sort of teams in Italy that, you know, Roma are not a team that challenge for the league, and Roma, I know they're not a relegation team. I don't think a team in the top 10, traditionally the 10 most traditional top 10 teams would touch Jose.
Yeah.
So I think for him to get a Premier League job, it's, you know, you're probably looking at maybe a West Ham. I know they're probably the only team like I can think of that we're going to hear him because, you know, West Ham could hire anyone. You just don't know what they're going to do. But I just think Newcastle, Villa, he's been at Spurs, been at United, been at Chelsea. Liverpool wouldn't touch him. Arsenal wouldn't touch him. United, you know, or Man City wouldn't touch him. So Bournemouth and Brighton have completely opposite models. Brentford the same. I just don't see where he could go. Or maybe a West Ham. Everton have Moyes back. I think they're happy enough there.
Yeah.
So you're possibly looking at, you know, Palace are very happy with Glasner. I just don't know where he could go. Fulham are happy with Marco Silva.
No,
if he wants to come back to Premier League, this is the type of job he's going to take.
He's not. His days of getting a big top job in England are over. But it'll be interesting to see it would be interesting to see if they went for if they sacked Fark. The first person I could see is, all right, Sean Dyche, get on the phone, because like
I think he's going to be sacked because if they're having talks about it, then they must be thinking about it, and you have that thought in your head, I think they're going to act on it. I don't know how. I know people might look at it as harsh, but you know, if his speciality is championship and struggles, I mean, the time he's been in the Premier League in Norwich has been a real battle. I mean, they've been relegated. I think they finished bottom both times. And I know you could say that's probably what it is.
It would be a really interesting choice if Leeds went for someone like a Rafa Benitez or
something. I think that's the way they're going to go because they've had the attacking managers, and whilst it's been entertaining and good to watch, it's ended up winning the championship. Burnley are very different to the Burnley that came up the last time around. The company, they were breaking all sorts of records for goal scorers, and they were very good to watch. Parker's team are breaking records for the our way of conceding less goals. Parker, of course, has had a taste of Premier League as well. Not the best record, but he has now. This is his third promotion from the Championship, and he does seem a lot more adaptable than the likes of a Daniel Farke. So Burnley may feel that Parker, and the way they're set up is ideal for staying in the Premier League. You know, they're going to be resilient and they're going to be hard to beat.
But like, I'm just sitting here. We obviously don't know who the third promoted team is yet, but just say, I'll pick a name, just say it's Sunderland. What out of the 17 other teams, who's the weakest there to go down? Like that's what I look at.
Well, you look at this year and you say West Ham, United, and Spurs are the three weakest, but
I know, but they're not going to be as bad. Well, West Ham, you never know because they're just a basket case. But Spurs and United are not going to be as bad next year, you would think.
No.
But I do think Forest will drop off next year. because they are going to have Europe of some sort, you would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Sunderland there. It's going to be Bristol or Sheffield United, Sunderland, Bristol City, and then there is a bit of a scrap for that last spot on the final day. Coventry currently sitting there in sixth. It will be a remarkable job if Lampard can get them into the playoffs, but they are starting to stumble a bit. But they know if they won their final game, they will be in that sixth spot. Let's just act on the case that it is M4. It would mean that Sheffield United would play Coventry and Sunderland would play Bristol City. How would you assess that? Like, Sheffield United are a mile clear, they are teams, but there is quite a big gap between Sunderland and Bristol City, and quite a big gap between Bristol City and Coventry.
Anyone but Sheffield United, please. I don't want to watch them in the Prem again because they will. You know what? I would love to see Bristol City because they've never been on the Prem before. I don't think.
Yeah, everybody a soft spot for Sunderland, so I'd like to see Sunderland do it.
So would I. Like
Sunderland was great.
Sunderland or Bristol City. Well, Sunderland at one point this season were up challenging top spot, and they've sort of. I seen last weekend they lost to Oxford, was it?
Yeah. Well, they're just preparing for playoffs. They're actually in a position where they can't finish any higher door, and they've been like that for a few weeks. So they've been stuck in fourth spot. They can't move, I think, for the last 3 weeks. So they're a bit like Spurs in terms of United, where they're just kind of resting players for the end of the season for their big games.
And Sunderland have a few players that people will have their eye on, because if Sunderland don't get promoted, I can see your man, what do you call him, Chris Rigg. He's a young lad, and Joe Bellingham. So there's going to be a few there, but for me, it's between Sunderland or Bristol City. That's the two teams I would love to see promoted.
The most interesting thing about the Premier League last 4 weeks is the race for Europe. It's kind of been these teams now fighting for these Champions League spots over the last few weeks. It looked like Villa could get back on it when they beat Newcastle, but then they lost to Man City. Newcastle have got those points back, obviously beating Ipswich. Forest have a game in hand, which they play on Thursday at home to Brentford. But I mean, how do you see it now? You know, between Newcastle, City, Forest, Chelsea, and Villa, can Chelsea and Villa get back on it? You know, are these, or is it them three? Do you think? How do you see it? Because
I did say Villa.
There's only a couple of games left between them. I think Forest have to play Chelsea in the last day.
Yeah,
and Newcastle play Chelsea, I think, on the third last. I think not this weekend, but the following weekend. So Chelsea have 2 games against potential rivals, which may help them in terms of they could take points off.
They couldn't play Liverpool at a better time, as I said earlier, because we haven't.
Yeah, the only thing that's maybe against Chelsea is they're both away from home. They have to go away to Newcastle and Forest.
I said Villa last week, but I don't know now. I'm going to change my mind again. I'm going to go. I think City and Newcastle are certs.
I think City have a very favourable last few games. I think they play Southampton and Leicester. I could be wrong, or Southampton and Ipswich, one they are.
No, I think they've already played Leicester twice.
Well, they definitely have Southampton. They play, I know that, and they've somebody else.
I'm gonna go Newcastle. So from third to sixth or third to fifth, I'm gonna go Newcastle, Forest. Newcastle, City, Forest. I think
Forest in the first spot.
I think Chelsea will just drop out.
As you say, Chelsea do have that advantage in terms of they have to play 2 teams, albeit away from home. But you'd imagine Liverpool won't beat the races on Sunday. So that's an opportunity to get 3 points.
You wouldn't.
I think Villa are the least likely at the moment. I think they're running out of steam a wee bit.
Do you think Emery could move on?
Nah, I don't think so. We'll speak about the FA Cup in a minute, but it's just been a real disappointing finish for the great performance against PSG. They come up short, and then they beat Newcastle, and I thought they're going to run teams close, and then they beat. I think Emery reverted the type. I think that's Emery's biggest weakness. That sometimes he overthinks it, and he gave Man City too much respect, and they lost
that cup final on Saturday. They were well beaten.
Yeah, and then they were very poor. I think the Man City games took a stuffing out of them. They were
too passive against Palace in the cup, I thought.
Yeah. Look, they still have an opportunity, but I think they're rank outsiders now.
Who do you think?
I think Newcastle and Man City. and then I think Chelsea and Forest are fighting for that last spot now.
So who
I think
would you
Forest
say?
could get back on it, but I think between Chelsea and Forest, I think it could go down to the wire. I think Chelsea and I think Forest play Chelsea last game. It could be a
What
back-to-back
happens if What happens if Chelsea and Forest won all their games and say they draw then the last day? Who gets it? Forest, is it?
Aye, Forest.
I hope Forest do get it because they deserve it. I think.
I think it'd be heartbreaking if they don't, even though they would have to fall back Europa League, but I still think it would be a massive opportunity. Palace beat Villa, as you say, 3-0, a fantastic performance by Villa. And then Man City beat Forest 2-0 on Sunday. So it sets up a Man City versus Crystal Palace FA Cup final. Probably not the final that people expected at the start of the season.
Nope.
Glasner's done a great job at Palace. Probably the most successful manager at Palace since Pardew in terms of where they are in the league. I know Hodgson had a few mid-table finishes. Pardew got them to a cup final as well, the FA Cup final, and they lost to Man United 2-1 10 years ago, believe it or not. So
is that the final that he started dancing after they scored?
Dancing 1-0 up. Now, I think Man City will be heavy favourites for this final, but they were heavy favourites last year. And what I've seen in Palace is they're a very good counter-attacking team, and they'll definitely give Man City problems.
They played them a few weeks ago and they were 2-0 and they got absolutely battered in the second half.
After a game at Wembley, but final as well. It'll be tight.
Obviously I don't want Man City to win everything. I despise everything about that club, as you well know. But I would love Palace to win it just because they would get what Conference League in.
No, Europa League.
Europa. Imagine Palace in the Europa. That would be so funny.
Well, I think there's a lot of things to be sorted out, but I mean there might be a whole host of English teams in Europe depending on.
If City won the FA Cup, who gets that Europa League spot?
So, go from the top. Newcastle have won the League Cup, which qualifies as a Conference League spot.
Yep.
Well, they're unlikely to finish any lower than fifth, I think. Now Newcastle, they're going to be in the Champions League, so their spot passes down. If Chelsea won the
Conference League, they get into the Europa League.
Yeah, but they may already qualify for the Europa League through their position. So again, their position passes on. Spurs or United could win the Europa League, then qualify for the Champions League. So you could have 6 English teams in the Champions League. And of course, if Palace won the FA Cup, they would then claim a Europa League spot as well. So I think there could be up to 11 teams in Europe, which is unlikely. But there's a good chance there's going to be 8 or 9, looking the way things are going. So there could be a lot of teams playing European football next year.
Who would it be definitely in Liverpool, Arsenal, Newcastle, and then probably Forest, Chelsea? Well,
there'll be at least 6 teams in the Europa League or the Champions League if the top 5 plus United or Spurs. So you'd have 6. Spurs would be 6 teams in one country in the Champions League.
Do you think Spurs or United will win the Europa League?
Great opportunity now, haven't they?
If Spurs were playing Lazio this week, I'd say it's done.
Well, I think the most unlikely final is Bodo Glimt against Atletico. I think that's the most unlikely of the two. So I think we only have at least one English team on there. I think but I think as per as they've been, at least one of them will get there, and there's a chance they could both meet there. So look,
I would like to see me as not a neutral. I would like to see a Bilbao Spurs final. I think that'd be nice.
Let's look at the European fixtures this week. Of course, we've discussed some of them there. Let's start tomorrow night. Arsenal, it could be a nightmare season for Arsenal. If Man City won the FA Cup, Liverpool won the league, United or Spurs won the Europa League, Newcastle won the League Cup, Palace have won the FA. It's every team is kind of different teams have different successes, and they could be the team that misses out. And
even if
Pochettino was the Spurs, he got a lot of criticism for not winning, but I always felt we were better than a lot of these teams. And I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, Pochettino Spurs is a lot better than Ange's Spurs. But Ange could end up having a trophy in a few weeks' time, whereas Poch doesn't. So it's sometimes football's crazy. But
Poch in his finals had to play Chelsea, Man City, and Liverpool. So I think he can give him a back.
Difficult finals.
Do you have any spare PSG tops going for the morning?
Definitely hoping PSG can get a result and then finish it back in France. But really, really interesting tie. 2 different styles of play. PSG are very, 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 very good on the ball. Arsenal are very, very good at the back and can play as well, like we've seen against Real Madrid. Arsenal can mix it up.
PSG were beat at the weekend, weren't they?
Yeah, league's over though. As the big difference between these two sides, that Arsenal can play different styles of play. I think PSG only know one way of playing. So PSG are going to have to be at their best. They beat Arsenal over these 2 games, whereas maybe Arsenal can mix it up. We've seen against Madrid, they went on the front foot in the first leg. Second leg, were able to soak up the pressure and keep them out. So Arsenal can mix it up, and PSG are very much going to be one-dimensional, but very, very good at what they do. So I think this is a fantastic Champions League semi-final.
Oh, it is. But I will say Arsenal haven't been so great defensively in recent weeks. Saliba's I know they were already through.
They're missing Gabriel.
But I think the key battle is going to be the midfield. The PSG midfield, and Partey suspended as well, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Although, as I always say in this, Partey should be somewhere else. But allegedly, but he's suspended. So, and what the PSG map? So you would assume it'll be Rice, Odegaard, and Jorginho.
Yeah.
And then PSG would be Neves, Vitinha, and who's the other one? Rees. So it'll be a very interesting. And I think the difference is Arsenal can score goals. Or sorry, PSG can score a lot of goals, and Arsenal are very good at the back. So it's 2 blanks first, really. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is tighter than we think. The first leg, I think PSG, they go through. I think PSG have to go back to France with at least 1 goal on it.
Yeah. So what's your prediction for tomorrow night?
2-2.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a draw as well. I'm going to go for a 1-1. Barcelona against Inter Milan. Difficult couple of weeks for Inter Milan since they qualified for the semi-final. Now second favourites, they won the league. Defeat the Roma at the weekend, and that leaves Napoli 3 points clear. In Italy with 4 games to go. And an Italian journal also said Inter Milan are running out of steam. Now, well, they're saving themselves for the Champions League because they've won the Serie A few times in the last few years. Maybe this is the one they want, but Barcelona are going to be boosted by that Copa del Rey one against Madrid, which is very, very controversial.
I just want to speak about that. Real Madrid's behaviour was an absolute disgrace, and they're a club who just, I know they're Real Madrid, but they act like petulant children. Did you see? Did you see?
Per form the other night. Now I only seen bits of it, but
did you see Rudiger throwing stuff at the referee?
Yeah, no, they can't seem to take the royal at all.
And then they have
how the penalty was overturned. I don't know how the penalty was overturned.
The Barcelona, I don't know, but no, when they said we weren't going to play the game because of the referee, they're flat out about referees. And if I'm Trent now, obviously I'm speaking from a Liverpool point, but if I'm Trent looking at that, I'm going, hang on a minute, I just won a league here at my own club, and that's a bit of a shit show at the minute.
That's it, and I think Darren's right there. I think Barcelona at the minute have a lot of guns, and Inter Milan are, yes, I know they may well be a different Inter Milan on Wednesday night than one we've seen in Serie A the last couple of weeks, but I think the way Barca's playing, they're playing with so much confidence. I think at the minute they're the team to beat in this Champions League.
I think the winner.
I know another thing to be so successful against Real Madrid. They constantly beating Real Madrid. Madrid are a hard team to beat. Once they're beating them all the time. So I think
Hansi Flick has beat them every time this season that they've played.
So I think that's good. That's how they're not going to be faced by playing anyone Barcelona. So I think if Barcelona can bet themselves tomorrow night, get a good lead, and make it very difficult then for Inter Milan to come back. But I'm going to go for a 3-1 Barca win.
I'm going to go 3-0 Barca.
3-0 Barca. Moving on to the Thursday night's games. I think Europa League sometimes divides opinion in terms of interest, but I think a lot of people will be keeping an eye on the Europa League. United and Spurs.
I'll be finding a Bilbao top from somewhere.
Bilbao, who are hosting the final, of course, entertain Man United in the first leg. United can get a test for Bilbao. Will they return there for the final? Is the big question. How do you see this first leg going? Because Bilbao, I think, at the moment are seen as favourites by many people. Although you could argue that Bilbao and United have a much more difficult route in their semi-final. They're going to have to, you'd imagine, they're going to have to beat Spurs and the other one. Either Bilbao or they're going to beat each other and then beat Spurs. Spurs really, you'd imagine, would only have to play one of these teams in the final. They should get through.
if you flip it, I think if Spurs were playing Bilbao, Spurs will be out.
Yeah.
I generally do at the minute. But I'm going to go 2-1 Bilbao.
Yeah. I don't know what they make up Bilbao. I haven't seen enough of them.
Nearly,
I think the fact
the only
Rangers
player that I
struggled to overcome Rangers over 2 games. Now I know they had a lot of opportunities, but the fact that they couldn't, and Rangers have been poor all season really, and there was 10 men on there. I think for virtually the whole first game. They're a decent team, but I don't think I think they're a big name in terms of they've got some good players, but I don't think they're as good as when everyone's making out to be. And
no,
I'll be totally honest with you, I haven't seen one good side in this competition. So as far as poor as United and Spurs have been, they've got every opportunity of winning this competition because I think it's a league of inconsistent teams. You know, Bilbao aren't pulling up any trees in Spain. You know, they're
not. But if you look at United in the Europa League, they're very lucky to be in this.
The only team to be on that's unbeaten. Not.
I know, which is surprising, but
so, it probably shows you the level of it that no one's been able to beat them.
I know, but Leon collapsed in the end. Like I don't know how that happened, but football's football. But I'm going to go 2-1 Bilbao.
I'm going to go 1-1.
It'll be tight.
Spurs have a lot of pressure on them on Thursday night, taking on the Norwegian Minnows, Bodo Glimt. Of course, Ange Postecoglou knows of them, and they knocked his Celtic team out a few years ago in the Europa League, 5-1 in aggregate. So he won't be taking them lightly. But there is a Norwegian journalist who has been tweeting this week that this game has come at an awful time for Bodo Glimt. 5 of their first 11 players are going to be missing for this game on Thursday. 3 injuries to key players and 2 suspensions from the Lazio game. So it won't even be Bodo Glimt's strongest team. And he says, whatever's happening with Spurs at the moment, player for player, Spurs are a lot stronger. And it would be a massive shock in Norway if Bodo Glimt came away from the Spurs stadium with a result on Thursday night. So I think all the odds are stacked in Spurs' favour. They're able to rest a few players over the weekend. And look, we've been critical of Spurs a lot this season, but they're probably their 3 best performances in 2025 have been AZ Alkmaar home, and Frankfurt away. So I do think there is going to be more effort, more application, regardless if we're not playing for the manager. I do feel there is a will within them. They won as players. I think we've seen that against Frankfurt. There was no Ange ball, really. It was there was less risk taking, and there was a real resilience. They held out, they got over the line, and I think that's what you'll see from Spurs in this competition. You're going to see a different team to the one that's playing in the Premier League. Of course, they're still a bit beatable, but I just think they'll go down fighting in this competition.
I can't see Spurs not getting to the final. I'm going to go 2-0 here. I don't think it'll be a big hammering session, but I'm going to go.
But if anyone says to me, we need at least a 3-goal lead to go to Norway before I'm even confident of seeing this 3. I'm going to go for a 3-0 Spurs 1, and to be basically 1 foot under the final in Bilbao.
Who would you rather play in the final?
Bilbao, I think you'd want to avoid because they're at home. But in saying that, will that put more pressure on them in the final? You know, the fact they're at home.
The only Bilbao player I know of is Nico Williams.
Big difference in an artificial pitch, of course. Yeah, that will be the away game for Spurs. So I think if they can get 2 at least, but if they got the 3,
is there a pitch 4G?
There's only 8,000 seats. There's only 404 Spurs fans going.
That's
uncharted territory. I think it would be possibly the biggest shock in Europa League history if Spurs really get on for 2 games here.
See, if you do get put out, I would sack Ange in the tunnel.
Yeah, I think that could happen.
Regardless, I do think no matter what happens, I think he should go.
I think that's going to be the case. It's where he leaves with a trophy, or he leaves with his tail between his legs. But look, Owen, it's been great having you on. I know you're going to enjoy the next few weeks and months as Liverpool are champions. It's been brilliant reviewing all the big moments for Liverpool and the rest of the big stories from the weekend. Of course, we'll be back on Friday, looking back at a massive week in Europe, and we'll look forward to the Premier League games at the weekend as well. Owen, if you're new around here, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more content, and we'll be back very soon. Owen, top man, thanks very much.
Cheers.